Hello and good day, South Carolina. Welcome to the South Carolina State House. My name is Doug Spear, and I am the president of the South Carolina Federation of Republican Men. Today we have a presser on a very important topic, and that topic is states' rights and medical freedom. I'm going to now turn the program over to our Executive Vice President, Brandon Peake. Brandon.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for everyone that showed up today. It's a very important topic with state rights and medical freedom. I think it's our constitutional right that we choose what we do when it comes to vaccines and things like that. We have our freedom and our right to choose. So with that being said, I think it's very important that we bring as much awareness to this as we can, because we shouldn't be forced to take anything, whether it be a vaccination or anything, against our will. That's not what America's about, and that's not what we're about, and we will fight tooth and nail to make sure we uphold the Constitution and keep those rights. Jerry, this is our Public Policy and Legislative Affairs Director, Gerald Byrne. I'm going to turn it over to him.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for all coming out to our States' Rights and Medical Freedom Rally. I want to make sure that, those with informed consent, with the research out, that the constituents retain the right that the COVID-19 vaccinations stay voluntary, and that no employer should take an adverse employment action against an employee. No one should feel ramifications from guidelines that were changed profusely throughout the course of this pandemic. From radio stations, news outlets, and the federal government and their overreach, I believe that shoving it in people's face and the constant theme of coercion disincentivizes those to adhere and rather question. Question as to how many vaccinations are enough. Question how the current administration has tried to implement a workaround mandate through OSHA, and ultimately question liberty. We are here to advocate this legislative session as constituents of South Carolina for our lawmakers to hear us. The South Carolina Federation of Republican Men have been working diligently to push for medical freedom legislation to reach the governor's desk for a signature and be brought into law. We must ensure that the federal government is in check and that citizens are given a choice when it comes to their medical decisions. As we have seen and what the courts have voted on, as this relates to a personal story, my sister, who is a registered nurse, we hear stories all the time about people feeling coerced, either get the jab or face losing your job. And we need to protect the constituents of South Carolina and make sure that everyone gets to keep and retain that decision. Lastly, and one of the things that I do want to touch up upon is the statistics. Statistics are what should be looked at more so. I think the biggest misconceptions lay at the data manipulation that bear as a catalyst to push a political agenda. An example of how hyperbolized this push has gone is coming from the highest court in this land, where a justice claimed that 100,000 children were on ventilators and in serious condition. In reality, there were fewer than 5,000 at the time. When we look back into the history books, the numbers become more revealing, exposing the underlying conditions, real COVID numbers, and reveal the high survival rate of this disease. For now, we stand for liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness, and look forward to hear from our speakers. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome. And thank you to the South Carolina Federation of Republican Men for bringing this topic to the forefront. We need this. I'm Senator Penry Gustafson, representing District 27, which includes Chesterfield, Kershaw, and Lancaster counties. And I'm very honored to be able to kick this off today. Lots of good speakers, a lot of good patriots and Americans today speaking. Now, many of us have been rightly upset over government intrusion in our lives, at work, at play, at home. Many people have been faced with the very real reality of jab or job. I personally feel bullied, and I'm a legislator. Our children are being forced to wear masks. They are missing so much school. There is misinformation shared that we are from trusted sources. The sacrifices that small businesses have endured, including total loss. Many people lost their businesses entirely. It's been unreal. 2 years. COVID is real. People have lost much, but we are not where we were 2 years ago. Now, most of us want very little from government. In fact, just leave us alone, right? Let's just go along to get along without confrontation. But that's too uncomfortable, right? My friends, sometimes confrontation in politics is just plain necessary. The average American is vulnerable in the fact that we are not speaking out enough, not facing these problems head on. And there's so many negative connotations with the word confrontation. So let me put my optimistic spin on this. As a woman of great faith, I firmly believe that confronting evil is a positive act. Confronting evil is a positive act. Some may argue the word evil is a much too strong a word, but I don't know, is it too extreme to lose your job when you've had COVID twice and you don't want to have that vaccine and you're told to leave and you don't even get unemployment benefits and your family's depending on you? I think that's pretty extreme. And intentionally dividing us is also evil. It is bad for all of us. It is bad for children, it is bad for men, women, all people, everywhere. And rest assured, we are being categorized in opposing groups by race, sex, gender, class, political party, and vaccine status. And we're all being pitted against each other. This is not the American way, and this is not the Palmetto State way. Everything from the clouds in the sky to our medical decisions have become politicized. It's very unfortunate. But freedom is not given by our government. Freedom comes from God. It is God-given. That's who grants us our freedoms. And the thing that makes America so exceptional is our self-governance and sovereignty. Growing personal freedoms have been America's historical trend since the beginning. Our first president, George Washington, so long ago, recognized the danger of tyranny as he finished up his second term and decided not to do a third term. I think it was 1797 was his last year in office. And he warned us, because back then the idea of personal freedom was very radical, but tyrant kings were not. So freedom or tyranny, because we can't have both. And we certainly are not going to have both in South Carolina. So I stand in this place, the state capital in Columbia, South Carolina. I stand in a place of gratitude and not fear. This kind of confrontation is not unpleasant for me, because I'm thankful to have the freedom to do so. I'm thankful to have the position where I can speak truth and I can share it with everyone on the internet and anyone who's here today. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so thankful that we're not standing here speaking wondering if a missile's going to come down on our head. I'm thankful to be an American. And it's okay for us to feel this way and to be proud of our country. The thing that binds us Americans is liberty. Now, the government likes to play class warfare games. That's what I call them, games, class warfare games. They put restrictive and tyrannical mandates. These mandates have crossed all economic and racial lines and have really overpowered any difference that might be between us among groups. Our American government exists to protect our rights and freedoms. And the only entitlement we share as Americans is self-governance. That's it. So as your legislator, I work within the General Assembly to bring forth good legislation born out of good policy. We elected leaders must lead, and we must find positive confrontations. We cannot avoid these conversations. We cannot avoid this because we might feel uncomfortable. And this isn't easy, but doing the right thing sometimes is not easy. What's uncomfortable is the idea that we'll have to show our COVID ID somewhere to get on an airplane or a restaurant. And what's uncomfortable is the thought that our children would not ever recover from the ravages of COVID and missing so much school. It's mandates. What is uncomfortable, my friend, is someone I described before, and I wish I could give him a name, but he's asked me not to repeat it. What's uncomfortable is losing your livelihood because someone is arbitrarily telling you to get a shot and put it on a piece of paper. I play offense. And I will tell you, we will not be deterred in our leadership efforts against government overreach and our medical decisions, because that's what we're talking about today, right? We're doing the right thing here at the right time, and I'm not willing to concede any autonomy in the shadow of compromise. Compromise is not a good word. Confrontation's fine, compromise no. If we citizens concede where our self-governance is concerned, what do they give up? Let's think about that for a moment. What do they give up? Our government gives nothing because tyrannical leadership only takes. Individual freedom should be common ground for all political parties, Democrats, Republicans, everyone. This is a common thread. This is a common value for Americans and for South Carolina. And I promise you, I will do everything in my personal journey as your legislator to ensure that our freedoms are protected, to protect the average person from unnecessary mandates. And let's pray for all those who are still suffering from COVID. There are plenty of them out there. Let's pray for the people who have lost their jobs. Let's pray for the employers who have tough decisions to make because they're being told to do something or other. Let's pray for our leaders that they are guided by truth and not by feelings, not by piece of legislation. So again, I feel very grateful. I feel honored to be here, and I'm very thankful to be an American today in 2022. And let's remember, it is 2022, not 2020. We're 2 years past or in the midst of COVID, and we're doing okay. Our businesses can make their own decisions, and we can make our own decisions about our own medical well-being. So I am kindly, respectfully, confrontationally asking the government to butt out of my medical decision-making. And thank you for keeping us safe. That's all I have today. I hope I can come back. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. This is a good thing, y'all. Somebody needs to go downstairs and round people up to come up here. Like, bow tie. Brandon, you can do that.
All right, next
Forgive me
we're
for
going
calling
to
you that.
have Reverend Leon Wynn. He's going to speak on behalf. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Leon Wynn. I'm the pastor of the Rock Hill Missionary Baptist Church in Clarendon County, where I've been pastoring there right at 25 years. I was asked, and I'm so grateful and so appreciative that I was asked to be a part of this, because I am somewhat perplexed and shocked, not shocked, in the challenge of it. My oldest daughter is a respiratory therapist. She's worked with the virus. She's had the virus twice. My grandson has had it twice. My granddaughter has had it once. I've had it. And the virus is nothing to play with. However, regardless to the virus, I believe in the freedom of choice. And that's my point of being here, the freedom of choice. God made us a free moral agent. God does not demand for us to serve him. He gives us that freedom. He wants us the freedom to worship and to serve however we want to do it. As a Christian, we do it a certain way, but we have that freedom. And no government has the right to take and infringe upon us the freedom they want us to have, and we not have our own freedom. We should have medical rights to make the choice on whether we want to take the vaccination or not. To be frank with you, I took the shot. I took it. And I am the worst person on planet Earth when it comes to needle. I will run if I wasn't grown. But because so many things transpired in my life, so many people have died in my life, being a pastor, I've done so many funerals, I took the shot. But it's not the shot of me taking it is what is important. I made my own decision to take it. The government should not mandate whether I take it or not. I've watched people over the years, over the last 2 years, such as you have, that have done everything right. They wore the mask, they double mask, they triple mask. I've seen people with the mask and the shield, and they still contracted the virus. They still got it. It's an airborne pathogenic, which means it's microscopic. You cannot see it. And regardless to what we think of, what we feel, the ratings now is not that you get the virus, not that you're not going to get the virus, you can protect the virus, or it's more now when you get it in comparison to you getting it. Because it's, once again, it's an airborne pathogen. I've seen, once again, people that I know just did, once again, everything, don't want to repeat myself, to combat this virus. You cannot legislate morality. People have to have their own freedom. And the thing about it, we got to take, let me pause parenthetically, we got to take this hate out of it. There's too much hate about this virus. You're mad at me because I don't wear my mask. Several, last year before last, I can't remember correctly, we were in the grocery store, a couple of friends of mine, and we were walking, we didn't have the mask on, and this lady confronted us. Y'all don't have your mask with the utmost attitude. Like, I'm a humorous guy. You got yours on, why do I need mine? If you're protecting yourself, what I have to be worried about? Take the hate out. This country is so divided. And we don't need a virus. I want people to think about this. A virus, allow me to reiterate, a virus have divided the country, the nation, who wearing the mask and who not wearing the mask. If you want to wear the mask, please wear your mask. But don't get mad at me because I don't want to wear it. I'm just as much as concerned about that virus as anybody else is. I am. But one thing that God has allowed me the ability to realize, all of us are going to die. I know you don't want to hear that, but that's the real reality of life. Everything that lives will die. A lot of people died and didn't have nothing to do with the virus. I did a funeral on yesterday of one of my members of the church. He died from a stroke, had nothing to do with the virus. We have to trust God, and what I want people to understand, I got this little caption in my wallet, in my phone, not my wallet, in my phone, where this young boy is drinking out of the trough water that the horse is drinking from. And the caption of the point is, this is why country kids have such a strong immune system. That's right. We got to allow God to build our immune system. Let's break it down. We had the flu. You had the swine flu. We had every 4 years of my, if I'm correct, we've had a virus. But God has allowed our immune system to build it. When the flu epidemic came out, it took out thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. This virus has done the same thing. But we got to put our trust more in God than in the government. Allow me to say that again. We got to begin to put more of our trust in God than in the government. And that's why I'm standing here before you today, is to get people to understand, put their trust in God. I've talked with young people, and I got people that I work with, people that I've actually, to be frank with you, I've tried to take virus. Reb, I'm not taking that virus. I'm not taking that shot. I'm not taking that shot. Caught the virus, came back and said, I done had it now. And survived. There is no set criteria on how that virus is going to work on an individual person. What worked for one person, what helped one person, did not help the next. And that's what we would need to look at, is the virus is going to be there. And if I understand this correctly, y'all correct me if I stand corrected, this virus is not going anywhere.
That's right.
It's here. So our immune system has to build up. And in conclusion, because Professor Ryder said, keep it simple, stupid. And I'm going to keep it simple. The fact is, no one has the right to force what they feel, what they want on someone else. That's the whole concept of what I'm about. Hopefully that's what you're all about, is that no one has the right to force your ideology, your concept on me. If I want to take the shot, that's my freedom. We are a nation of freedom. And when you take my freedom away, what's going to be next? I look at Ukraine, and one of the things I heard someone said the other day, just pause and just think about that. They're issuing our guns to citizens. That don't work too well in America, because we got the Second Amendment. We got our guns. We might need some more ammo, but we have our guns. Once you take people's freedom away, you will take everything they are and everything they believe in away. We're going to fight to keep our freedom, keep our rights. To, if you want to, once again, if you want to take the shot, take the shot. I'm supporting you 100%. But if you don't want to take the shot, I'm supporting that 100% as well. No one need to force us to take anything that you and I don't want to take. That's our God-given freedom. God, once again, made us free moral agents. He gave us the ability to make the choices in our lives. And that's what we must fight for. Legislator, government do not have the right to take our freedom. God bless you. Heaven smile upon you. And we pray and hope that in the onslaught of all this, people will get the concept. We don't have to hate because you don't like what I like. I don't like eating collard greens without neck bone. And my wife told me on one occasion, you don't always have to have collard greens without neck bone. If I'm going to eat collard greens, it's going to have neck bone. But that's my right. That's my freedom. Don't take my freedom away. Too many people have died. Too many people have suffered to give us the freedom that we have in America. And we as Americans must band together, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, to keep that freedom that others have sacrificed for us to have. God bless you. Heaven smile upon you.
Thank you, Reverend. Like, you really touched on some key moments here, and it is sad that, you know, a virus or a mass has really divided our nation. So we have Candace Jennings. She's going to be our next speaker. So, Candace?
Hi everyone, thank you to the South Carolina Federation of Republican Men for having me and for staying in the fight to protect the liberties of South Carolinians. My name is Candace Jennings. I'm running for State House for District 97, that's in the Low Country, but that's not why I'm here today. I'm here to talk about my first fight. In 2012, I joined the medical freedom fight. As an expectant mother, I wanted to ensure I did everything in my power to protect my family and our health. As I learned more about our food and pharmaceutical systems and of medical history, I was overtaken with a new sense of purpose and passion. This is how I initially became involved in this battle. But make no mistake, this is not a new fight. It has been going on since at least the 19th century in the United States. I'm going to give you a few examples. In the 1840s, J. Marion Sims performed surgical experiments on enslaved African women without anesthesia. Throughout the 1800s, many atrocities were carried out. An Irish servant underwent experimentation on her brain without her consent. Spinal taps were performed on 29 children without parental knowledge or consent, just to determine whether spinal taps were harmful. Girls under the age of 12 were injected with syphilis. Mentally disabled boys were used for gonorrhea experimentation. And it continued into the 20th century. In the early 1900s, prisoners were forced to partake in eugenics experiments and implant experiments, testicular implant experiments. Dozens of children were used as material and injected with tuberculin. Many went blind. Army physicians in the U.S. territory of the Philippines experimented with bubonic plague and cholera on prisoners without their consent. Many died. In the 1940s, the US government infected over 5,000 Guatemalans with syphilis without proper consent. Decades later, our government was sued for this. Even in the mid-1950s, mentally disabled children were experimented on without parental consent. And most famously were the Tuskegee experiments on African American males with syphilis. They were denied proper treatment so that physicians could track the progress of the disease. The study ended in 1979, that's not that long ago. Think about that. By then, only 74 of the test subjects were still alive, and 59 of these subjects had passed the disease to their spouses or their children. From world history books, we know the depths of depravity humans can reach when given the opportunity for total control. And we have seen how quickly a society can reach this depravity when it is under the guise of advancing science and protecting your neighbor, okay? We read about the atrocities inflicted upon entire groups of people for generations without their consent. These people were ostracized, belittled, dehumanized, and then experimented on. That dark chapter in world history led to the glimmer of hope called the Nuremberg Code, which, as the BMJ puts it, laid down 10 standards to which physicians must conform when carrying out experiments on human subjects, and a new code that is now accepted worldwide. This judgment established a new standard of ethical medical behavior for the post-World War II human rights era. Amongst other requirements, this document enunciates the requirement of voluntary informed consent of the subject. The principle of voluntary informed consent protects the right of the individual to control his own body. This code also recognizes that the risk must be weighed against the expected benefit, and that unnecessary pain and suffering must be avoided. This code recognizes doctors should avoid actions that injure human patients. The principles established by this code for medical practice now have been extended into general codes of medical ethics. What is the very first standard of this code? The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. That comes straight from the Nuremberg Code, number 1. The history of unethical medical treatment goes on, with the disadvantaged often being the target. Haven't we progressed further as a society? Are we willing to close the door on the COVID chapter without guaranteeing proper legislation is in place to safeguard us, our children, and generations to come? Is this the legacy we want to leave? Even today, we witness medical kidnapping of children from concerned parents. Schools are violating our children and performing medical procedures without parental knowledge or consent. Meanwhile, our children are also taught to visit ideologies and to mistrust their own families. We have even seen our own government labeling parents domestic terrorists for trying to be engaged in our children's upbringing. None of this is hyperbole. We have seen all this happen before our eyes just in the last few years. So when news of a new virus broke and began spreading through the globe, people everywhere were terrified. Was our government's response to find a medical solution to the virus? No. It was a social solution. Healthy people everywhere were ordered to stay home and mask up. Churches were shut down, yet McDonald's and liquor stores remained open as essential businesses. Cashiers and salespeople were forced to become policy police toward their customers, and many small businesses were not able to survive and forced to shutter their doors forever. Was healthy eating encouraged? No. Exercise and active lifestyle? No. Lifestyle factors which statistically confer greater health advantages were not mentioned. Put on a mask, stay indoors, and if you must go out, do not get anywhere near another human being was the solution. And then suddenly we had a cure, a vaccine. But was this adequately studied and tested? Absolutely not. mRNA vaccines have been studied for decades on animal models to severe detriment to the subjects, even death, or worse health outcome at the best. Never had they been tested on humans. Neither had the non-mRNA vaccines been adequately tested. The average vaccine goes through nearly a decade of tests and trials before being administered to the general public. And even then, they are neither proper nor effective across the board. We are living in a mass experiment. We are watching live as people who mask, socially distance, get vaccinated and boosted still get COVID. So why are our lives and lifestyles screeching to a halt over something so ineffective? Why? We are seeing nurses and first responders, those who just got us through the last 3 years, lose their jobs because they want the ability to make their own health decisions. Why are college students being kept from their dorms, their dining halls, and classes because they don't want the shot, or even don't want to wear a mask? Are we going to talk about the loss of freedoms our military men and women endure for our country? They have been subject to medical experiments by our own government for decades and are now being forced out because they don't want a shot. An ineffective one at that. Yet they want to raise the minimum wage and pay people who work for menial jobs something higher than someone enlisting in the military is going to get, someone who's about to lay down their lives potentially for our country, for our freedoms. What has this country come to? Have we learned nothing? As you heard before, it was only a short few decades ago that mass experiments were being carried out on groups of people without informed consent. Our voices and our rights are being diminished by those in power who care only about more power and more control and are willing to cater to Big Pharma at our expense. I say no more. We know the past and we own our future. Stay on your legislators. Demand medical freedom in our state. Demand parental rights in our state. Demand a return to common sense and civility. We have a slew of good, strong bills that have been introduced since 2020. They are languishing in committee, and they'll likely die. The bills which see the light of day have provisions and allowances for forcing people to still test, mask, and take vaccinations. We weaken as a people when we let weak bills go to the governor. Again, I encourage you to stay engaged with the legislature. Do not let them avoid you. Do not let them give you a weak bill in place of a strong bill. When they make excuses, demand better. Do not let them forget that they work for us. Our representatives do the bidding of the people. We are not pawns in their money game. We are the arbiters of our destiny. Our government derives its powers from the consent of the governed, and we do not consent. We demand medical freedom. On the right side of our state seal, which part of it you can see above us, we see the words "Dump Spiro, Sparrow." While I breathe, I hope. While there is breath still in your lungs, I encourage you never to give up the fight. Thank you for your time. Please support me if you can. I'm running for House for District 97. I am the medical freedom candidate that we all need. Please come talk to me after this. I'd love to chat with you. You can check me out on my website at voteCandicejennings.com. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Candace. All right, next speaker we have Matthew Lieber.
First, I want to thank the South Carolina Federation of Republican Men for inviting me here. This is quite an honor that they'd want to hear from me on this topic. Let me tell you, when COVID happened, well, first, let me tell you, I am running for office. I'm running for the 116th district in Charleston County, and I just drove up from the Low Country with my 6-year-old daughter. When COVID happened, I took my kids out of school within 2 weeks. I could see where this was all kind of going. I was looking at the restrictions that they were putting on children, wearing the mask, also, having a teacher send you assignments and have you perform those assignments with your kid and then send it back. I was thinking to myself, why do I need a middleman? I can teach reading, writing, and arithmetic to my own child. So we took our children out. My 6-year-old, she often asks me, "Are we campaigning today, Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, we're campaigning today." And she said, "Well, that's great. What happens after the campaigning is over?" And I said, "Well, honey, Daddy gets to go to work for the people of South Carolina." And she said, "Well, where is that?" And I said, "You know what, honey, you know where your best dress is. Go get your best dress, and I'm going to show you that today." So we drove, and we are here today. I'm a combat veteran. I spent 8 years as a paratrooper, 2 years in the Special Forces. I was in the last European conflict, last combat in Bosnia in 1996. So I have seen firsthand how governments overreach, how they can terrorize their own citizens. There is nothing more sacred than our own persons, our own bodies. We should be CEOs of our own health care. I'm going to be very brief today because when you're talking about freedom and liberty, you don't have to have many words. You just have to publicly demand it and fight for it. Mahatma Gandhi actually said, if you don't give the people the freedom to fail and the freedom to succeed, they don't actually have freedom. I should have the freedom to fail. If I've decided that I don't want to get a vaccine, or I don't want to wear a mask, and I develop the virus and get sick. That's my freedom to fail. I shouldn't have a government mandate to me that I must succeed in some way that they lay out or they determine. That is not freedom. Our governments, from the federal government to local governments, overreached during this pandemic. They took away our jobs if we didn't comply with taking our shots. They took military fighting men, officers, and good enlistment men, and they took away their military careers if they wouldn't take an experimental jab. That's not America. That's not the America that I fought to defend. That's not freedom and liberty. That's not what the founding fathers laid out for us for our lives in America. And so we've got to be cognizant, because when governments take away freedom and liberty, they don't necessarily give it back very quickly. You have to fight for it. So we need to be in the forefront of this. It's funny that they just, in the last 8 months, or last month, 8 months before an election, decided, well, masks aren't important anymore. We're going to take away mandates and this sort of thing. It's funny that they did that. You know, they must have been looking at some polls or something. The American people want freedom and liberty, and they realize that. But don't think for a second that they won't come back for these rights. They will do it. If it means they can win elections, they will do it. And we have to be ready. We have to hold the line. And that's what I'm going to do when I win my election in November and I'm sworn in as a state rep. I am always going to fight for freedom and liberty of the citizens of South Carolina. It is up for them to decide what health care choices they make between them and their doctor, and it's none of my business. I don't want to be in between anybody and their doctor. Whatever they decide, whatever new virus comes up, that's their decision to make. It is not the role of government to dictate to the people what they have to do when it comes to their health care. I am principally against that. I always will be. And you know, this election is the election for the regular folks. We're taking back the wheel. The regular folks are taking back the wheel. We have enough doctors ruling over us. In fact, we have enough lawyers. We need lawyers, but we have too many of them ruling over us. We need a few paratroopers. We need a few regular guys. I'm running in this election because I'm the regular guy. I can go down to the shrimp wharfs in Charleston County, talk to the shrimpers, then I can take a phone call from the Speaker of the House that very afternoon, and both of these groups like me equally. And that's good for politics. That's a good way to represent the people of my district. My folks know that they have to elect somebody like them if they want to be represented. And that's what I'm for. I'm against this sort of tyranny that's going to always creep. And we've got to be smart about it. And we've got to represent folks that know how to fight, that have been in a fight. And I've been in that fight. My website is votelibra.com. I'm going to win this election. I'm going to represent the values and principles of the people of South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you for your service to our country.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, and next we have Sharon Carter.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. As he said, I'm Sharon Carter, and I too am running for the House of seat 90, but I'm here about liberties in general, and for these guys tasked today, specifically the medical liberties. But I just wanted to read just a small portion of the Declaration of Independence because this is profound. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. First and foremost, we must be in agreement that there's a Creator. I'm thankful that I'm a Christian, and I'm proud to say that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and I pray for wisdom and guidance from the Lord in every area of my life, and I expect those in leadership in our government to do the same. I prayed about that same perspective about whether to get a vaccination or not, and I did not feel compelled to do so. So my husband and I, we were not vaccinated, and we have not had COVID. But the first of these rights is the right to life. The right to life. So I will forever support the right to life of an unborn child. I was adopted. So that's a right that life deserves. Well, I'm a new grandmother as well, and my daughter went to the hospital and she didn't even know she had COVID. She's giving birth and they tested her and they said, "Oh, you're positive." And she said, "Oh, I thought I just had a cold." And her husband luckily was in the room with her because they were then quarantined. And the folks in the hospital began to treat my daughter, who was to have her child, like she had the plague. They're medical professionals who should have acted accordingly. They suited up. My son-in-law heard a nurse from outside the door say, "Oh no, she's tested positive. I don't want to enter that room." And my son-in-law said, "It's okay, we've already had the baby. We'd like to just be discharged and go home and not treated like we're a second-class citizen because my daughter, who was having a child, had COVID." But the second of these rights is liberty. The liberties, our liberties, are under siege. This virus has caused an overreaching of our local government. They're using fear to control us. As Christians, you can't live in fear and faith at the same time. I choose faith. Our churches should have never been shut down. We should never be forced to take a vaccination. I'm thankful that my husband and I have our own business and are retired. So we weren't forced by a particular job to choose our job over our liberties and having a vaccination. But here's what we should have been able to do all along. You should have been allowed to visit your loved one in a hospital. You should have been allowed to be with your loved one after surgery. You definitely should be allowed to be with your loved one when they're on their deathbed. There were folks with hospice care called in. My mother passed in a hospice hospital, and we all got to be around her pre-COVID days. And I know that my mother knew we were there. She couldn't communicate, but I know her spirit knew that we were there. And all I could think about during my best friend, whose mother passed during the COVID time, and her father was not allowed to be with her mother when she passed, is I'm pretty certain my dad would probably have been arrested because he would have had to be beside his wife of 56 years as she went to be with Jesus. That is an overstepping of the government boundaries of our freedoms and liberties that we have. Here's another one on a local level. I'm from Bamberg County. Bamberg County and Orangeburg County offices are still closed. To this day, government offices are closed by appointment only. Bamberg County's Department of DSS has been closed since March of 2020 to visitors. And why are there still only 12 people allowed at our county council meetings? It's a government control moment right there. This is the let's use the virus to cause an overreaching of our government, to put fear upon people so that they choose fear over faith so that we don't have accountability. So 12 people are allowed in that county building during a county council, and our council sits behind plexiglass with masks on. Fear has driven an overreaching of our government in several areas, and many have already been spoken about today. But I will be fighting for liberties because the Declaration of Independence still stands firm, and we have to fight for the liberties to not let the government overstep their boundaries from the get-go, because it's harder to backtrack, as we now know from COVID, than it is to just stand firm from the beginning. So I thank y'all. I thank you for your time. I am Sharon Carter, and I'm running for South Carolina House Seat District 90, and I will always fight for life, liberty, and our pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Like everyone touched on earlier, it's really vital, guys, that we stand up and we let our voices be heard. This is not the American way. This isn't, I mean, it shouldn't be happening. When someone tells you that you either have to get a vaccination or you lose your job, whether you're serving in the military, a firefighter, as a firefighter, it come down the pipeline to us to say, hey, you know, you're gonna get the vaccination or you're gonna be released. And then it's not right. We called our nurses and doctors heroes one year, and then the following year, we had them lined up on the unemployment line. And if that isn't fair, it's not acceptable. And the more that we get out and the more that we raise awareness, call your legislators, call your senators, whoever you have to, and let it be known that we will not tolerate this. We will stand up and fight. We're not going nowhere. And this is our right. This is our freedom. We have the right to choose. It's like the Reverend said. You know, it is our right to choose. God gave us that, and the government shouldn't take it away. They have their hands in too much as it is, from education to this and that, and now they're dictating what kind of vaccinations we can and cannot have, and it's unacceptable. And the South Carolina Federation of Republican Men will fight, like I said earlier, tooth and nail to make sure that we do whatever it is that we can do to make sure it stays out of South Carolina and we maintain our medical freedom as a whole. So, we just want to thank you guys for coming out and showing your support. So I'm going to turn it over to our president, Doug Spear.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, listening today. I greatly appreciate it. Extremely important issue here. This is not the only issue that the South Carolina Federation of Republican Men is supporting and pushing through legislation here in our beautiful State House. Stay tuned. We have Saving Women's Sports and medical freedom, obviously. We've got integrity and election integrity that we're also pushing. And so stay tuned. You're going to hear a lot more from the Federation in the weeks and months and years ahead. We're here to stay. Thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate it. Love South Carolina.